Hello and welcome to the Max Revenue Show. I am your host, Trey Shields, along with the Million Dollar Man, Luke Berry. Luke, how are you this morning?
Man, we're on the road again, pumped up. We were in Utah one week. We're in a couple different states that I can't disclose this week. We're behind enemy lines, just attacking as much as we can. But I'm stoked to be here.
All right, so kind of a two-pronged approach today. I want to talk about what you're doing behind enemy lines. We won't say where. Um, and then I also want to talk about vendor stack, partly because I'm an PNC idiot and I don't totally understand the EV space, but also I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to go from that traditional, here's the Buka carriers to like, how do I actually build out this customized stack to bring as a solution to my clients? So we're going to kind of talk about both. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's tackle the behind the enemy lines. It sounds like a really
Okay.
good headline.
All right, let's go.
I will say that the one of the best parts about this industry, if you structure it right with your systems and your daily rhythms, you can work anywhere at any time. So, like I said, I was in Utah with my wife. We had a couple of work meetings out there, in addition to just taking some time away, which is us. Again, you got to refresh, you got to Sabbath, you got to do that. But now I'm picking it back up, and I'm in a different hotel and a different part of the country, and yet I'm still able to get my workouts in. Still get to have a lot of meetings, a lot of activity, and then also get to have time with clients. And so, Sunday. So we got in from Utah, just to be fully transparent. We got in from Utah that Saturday. We threw a 60th surprise birthday party for my mother-in-law, which was awesome because I got to have one opportunity to tick her off because she thought she was going to be celebrated, and we were just going to take her to dinner. And she was like, "It's my 60th. I should have like a bigger celebration." So we threw a big party, and then I was on a plane Sunday afternoon. Hit the ground running Monday. We had meetings starting at like 9 o'clock. We had three meetings there. We had a lunch meeting with a prospective client. We had our actual meeting with a client we spent 2.5 hours with, which is like I'll talk about this in the vendor stack, but it was like 15 folks in the room from a senior leadership team. We did happy hour, and then we had a full dinner, and then we woke up this morning. We had an 8 o'clock meeting. We've got a workout in. Got a 12 o'clock meeting with the direct primary care doctor here locally. Then we've got a couple of drops with some prospective clients, that we've met with and we've already engaged in conversation with. And we have another happy hour with a client, and then another dinner with another prospective client, and some centers of influence. So you can stack as much as you can in those 2 days that I'm here. And then I'm out tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning back in Memphis, where I'm going to be with my kids and my fam to, live and fight for another day. So
Let's
it can
go.
be done. You just got to stack it. So just a word of encouragement to all those producers out there.
You're like a sniper. You just like dropping in, hitting your ass, getting your targets, and then getting out. Have you ever? What's that movie? There was a movie about a sniper with, I think it was like Jude Law. Have you seen that one? Behind
I
Enemy
have not.
Lines. I don't remember what it is. Anyways, doesn't matter.
The behind enemy line sounds familiar, but yeah. So yeah, again, it's a great industry. You can work as long as you have, your disciplines and rhythms set up. You can stack those actions and still hold yourself accountable and also have fun doing it. So it's always a fun time.
So I know a lot of people will probably be listening and be like, okay, well, you're dropping in another state. I'm assuming it's another state, calling
It's
on
like
these
nine,
people
yeah,
9 states over. How
yeah.
how are you going about setting up like all of these things? Like, what are these cold calls that you're calling in? Where like, how did you get set up? So, for instance, hypothetically speaking, I'm in New Orleans, and let's say I'm, you know, calling on XYZ industry in West Texas. Oh, what are you doing to get in the door so far away?
Yeah, I will say, and this is just a plug, and being an independent shop is, we don't have 50 locations in 50 states. So I'm not playing the CRM game. So that's the other
Mm.
thing that's nice. If I'm working for an ABC shop, I can't go out of my state or my territory, so to speak, unless it's like my dad owns this company and I have a direct in from my cousin or whatever it might be, where you have to get approval from management, senior level management. The directors of those offices have to talk, or the market leaders. So that's the first and foremost. I can call anywhere. The second thing that I have found in my career I'm a partner at a very large regional firm. We have clients all over, all over the country. But at the end of the day, we've been around over 100 years in Memphis. So if I stick in Memphis, you probably have already done business with us. You know of us. You're not doing business with us for a certain reason. And so the market's saturated, right? That is a thing. Saturation is a deal. And so the way I've approached it from some of my mentors that have taught me is I kind of let the Memphis business come. I don't try to force that, and I cold call like a dog, and I prospect like a dog in other states and other areas where I can afford to fail, right? Because not every idea is going to work. Not every meeting is going to have or add value. And the other thing is no one knows really Collier in Arizona or Collier in, Idaho or wherever it might be. And so when you're prospecting, going back to your ideal client, we're looking at, the world is our oyster, yes, but how do we find those rural areas or those areas where, it might be Chicago? Well, I know there's a bunch of big brokers in Chicago that everyone wants the business there, but what about the outside, counties that are outside of that? They're not willing to travel, 3 or 4 hours to. So like if you shout out to the Quad Cities is a great opportunity and a great area to prospect. I doubt many Chicago brokers are going to go all the way up to the Quad Cities or from other areas in that area. But like looking at areas like that where there's a right opportunity for you to go through and tackle. There's places in Texas and in Georgia and Tennessee. You just have to find those pockets. And for us, it's been lazy brokers with heavy acquisition present, and where clients are just tired of the big three, where we only have three options with these brokers, and a fresh face comes in and tells the truth, and it's just easier to get clients that way.
Let's go. All right. So, if you're listening to this and you want the full story, Luke dives into this in the podcast where we actually interviewed him back a couple of weeks ago. So just go back and scroll down. You'll see before he ever even joined Max Revenue, we just interviewed him, and he goes into all this and how he kind of goes out picking markets and stuff. So go check that out. All right. Now let's transition into the vendor stack. Um, I want to get away from the fully insured game and start bringing customized solutions to my to my clients. How do I even begin to do that?
Yeah, and this is a great question. So, last week we kind of talked a little bit about the consultative approach, the four doors, right? So you're fully insured, you got I want to get out of healthcare, you have let's learn to finance your risk, and then do I just want to go direct? And so really in that consultative approach, you have to be disciplined on being a consultant to your clientele. Now, I will take a step back. I know some senior guys that might watch this and give me grief, so don't shoot at me too hard. But you have some guys that are ride or die, like some guys that only do RVP, some guys that only do captives, some guys that only do X, Y, and Z, and that works for them. They've been doing it for a long time. That's kind of their stick. For me, I don't think one size fits all, and so I really try to evaluate who are the players in the room. And what I mean by that is like, for example, we had our meeting yesterday with our client. They had their senior leadership team involved, so the CLT or SLT, and there was like 15 people in the room. Well, it is our job to evaluate all 15 people in that room, which is, by the way, why I never go in just by myself. I always have a team because they're going to see things I'm not seeing, and that's the whole point of that team aspect. But when we're in there, we're evaluating, okay, who are the A players, who are the B players, and who are the C players. If you have a room full of C players, you cannot give them A level strategies. You just can't. So what I mean by that is if you have a fully insured client and you know they desperately need to be self-funded or in a captive or what have you, 9 out of 10 times I have forced that square peg in a round hole, meaning that there was a room full of C players and I was delivering them A level strategies and they couldn't get there. It was a dumpster fire every single time. Now, another difference with our firm is we get paid the same on new business as the same on renewal. So it's a 40-40 split, right? So I am paid to put out the fires that I create on the sales process. So I don't want to, what I've learned is I don't want to sell something to somebody because I took myself out of sales a long time ago. I love revenue and I love consulting, but I'm done selling this idea or pitching this idea to someone that's not going to get it. And at the end of the day, not every group needs to be self-funded. And I say that I was when I was in Utah, we were talking with some really large ERISA attorneys, and that was one of the lines that they had said is like, not every group needs to be self-funded. They just don't get it. And they're a lawsuit waiting to happen. So if you're out there and you're brand new and you're learning self-funded, learn it. Just realize that it's not a fit for everybody. So when you're in that room and you're evaluating, and you could see that you got a couple of B players that are starting to think like A players, and you got a CEO that's definitely an A level player. They get it. They understand business. They understand how this profitability discussion changes things, right? I.e., hey, would you like to add a few points to your EBITDA? Well, we could do that by taking the levers in your health within your health plan, and by moving these levers, we can actually create further EBITDA. Or you could also have the discussion of, you know, um, who's your best salesperson? Yeah, I always like to relate this to the CFO. How does your salesperson get compensated? Like how do you tie that metric in? And what I do is I simply say, okay, if we go reference-based pricing, if we do this direct contract, which is, running, right? It's not a crawl, walk, or not. It's a full-on sprint and run. If we do that and I say to you 7 figures, I am now your best salesperson, your entire organization, because I just generated this amount of revenue that you can tie back down to your bottom line. If you can start to have those kind of conversations with the C-suite, you then can get way more creative with your process of the vendor stack. And so being fully insured, you can still have a vendor stack, right? You could have your carriers. And by the way, too, I'm not going to mention, as we said earlier, we were kind of talking offline, this is really difficult to do, to talk about vendor stacks, because the vendors are changing every 6 months, right? So if I say a name today, that name may not be great in 6 weeks, right? Because all these vendors are trying to go IPO, they're being bought, leadership's changing. So what I want to keep this talk track down to, Trey, is just concepts, right? So in a fully insured world, at the end of the day, it's just kicking the can down the road. As we said, it's a financing game of deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses and premiums. You can have things like gap plans that you can add in, which are going to increase the deductible on your main plan with one of the BUCA carriers, and you're going to buy a secondary plan essentially to buy that deductible down. That's a great strategy for a small group. It could last depending on the group's demographics, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be the thing that fixes their issues. So when we look into a level funded stack, there's level funded programs that are out there everywhere. And a lot of producers are probably familiar with like level funded programs through Cigna, Aetna, maybe in the Blues, you might have that in your state, or United. And those are your traditional, level funded stacks. And in that, you can add Teladoc, you can add virtual primary care, you can add certain things there that are more bells and whistles. Again, they're really not tackling the issue at hand. In the level funded space, again, we're talking about financing your claim. You also have, traditional or non-traditional level funded plans that are created and program built or managed by third-party administrators. These are typically independent third-party administrators that are not owned by a BUCA carrier. So you could take any kind of independent third-party administrator and you could build out your own level funded program. And in the end, all a level funded program does is it mitigates the risk. It is a self-funded plan, but it mitigates the risk and it allows that employer to retain some cash at the end of the year if they perform well. So I'll give you a Chuck E. Cheese analogy, and I'll have to give kudos to my partner, John Collier, for this. But the Chuck E. Cheese analogy, if it's with a traditional carrier, if we're level funded, would be something like this. I take my kid to their birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and they have all those gold coins, if they still do that they get to use at the slots and all that. But if we left Chuck E. Cheese and went over to the ice cream store, and one of my daughters decided to use that money to buy ice cream with, they would tell her that she couldn't. Why? Because that's only Chuck E. Cheese's money. So if you look at the fully insured or the level funded carriers, right? So the BUCAs, what they will do is say, we're going to set $100,000 loss budget for you. And if you perform at 50,000, we're going to give that money back, but only if you renew. And by the way, we're going to keep half. So that means they're going to retain 25 grand and you're going to retain 25 grand as the employer, and you're going to move on, but you have to renew with them. So if they give you a 12 to 15% increase and you want your 25K, you got to renew. Now, that's a lot better than fully insured, right? That's a lot better than being fully insured. right? If you're fully insured, you're playing the financing game of deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes. We've just talked about that. So it's better. It's not the best. And so you can build vendor stacks there and you can start to control claims, but it's really not the end all be all. When you go outside of a state plan, so out of state law, and you move into ERISA, your world changes, right? ERISA is a great opportunity, or provides a great opportunity and flexibility for employers who are B and A players, right, to step into their C-suite and realize that they have the second largest expense behind payroll that they're not able to manage right now, and they need to start managing it. And really, where we start to talk through this with our clients is we start to hit on leverage trend. Leverage trend is the big bad wolf in the room. So simply put, leverage trend states that if I spend $50,000 on a procedure today, that's going to be $65,000 in 2027. Leverage trend, I think, and I could be wrong. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. I think it's almost 11% this next year, or it could be. It's like 8.5 to, depending on what you're looking at. Nonetheless, that claim is increasing. Well, you can't really control leverage trend in a fully insured market or a level funded market, because the cost of the healthcare side of that is trending upwards. So the only way to really tackle that is to go underneath ERISA. And when you go underneath ERISA, that's really where the real vendor stacks come into play. So, when we're talking vendor stacks, just for whatever or whatever you might think that might be, underneath a self-funded plan, we're creating an ecosystem, right? That's the reason why I created my Substack called Eco. We wanted to build out a healthcare ecosystem that was more palatable for employers. Here's where a lot of producers fail. They get vendor fatigued, or they vendor fatigue their clients, because they can take a vendor stack and add 30 different vendors, and your client gets lost. And not only that, the employee gets lost. So you try to simplify healthcare, and in the effort of simplifying healthcare, you've actually made it more complex. So what we typically tell our clients is, if you want to make healthcare easy, it gets very, very expensive quick. If you want to save money on healthcare and you want to start clawing back some of that opportunity, you can either look at it as opportunity or disruption, because there's some innovative approaches and levers you have to pull, but with anything change management, it's going to cause issues. And in our meeting with our client yesterday, out of the 15 people that were in that room, we had this discussion. We moved them from being a very large, fully insured group. They're 500 plus, and we moved them into a self-funded, model. Within 6 months, we cut their per employee per year spend. So we put them with an independent TPA, moved them again from a carrier model. We took their per employee per year spend from $15,000 a year down to $7,000. So just from a math perspective, for those guys that are in the room, you cut that in half, you times that by the multiple of their employee count, and that's the money in dollar amount that you just saved that employer. So it was well over $1 million that we saved them, all within a matter of six months plus trend. So they're like, how do we get more of this? How do we continue to just lock this down? And that's the question of, okay, well, how much disruption or innovation are you willing to go through? The Harvard Business Review talks about change management quite a bit. It's an article I would highly recommend folks reviewing. You got to be able to talk to the C-suite like that, because you can't just give a kid a Ferrari.
Mm.
You just can't. And so you are a consultant, and that opportunity, that goal or objective may be a 5-year plan, and you create milestones within that 5-year plan. And guess what? Here's a really big secret in our industry. If you're always working on a project, you'll never be fired.
I like it.
So again, it's not manipulative, but sincere, like from a sincere standpoint, if you know that client's not ready, then give them what they want, but put it 3 to 4 years out and put milestones in place. That way you can show your due diligence as a consultant of all the things that you've done over that 4 or 5 year period to get them to that point. So that's kind of really where I would start from a vendor stack standpoint. When you're looking at your clientele, is determining, are they, again, a C player, a B player, an A player? You can't give a C player, A-level strategies and the like. Now, when we go to vendor stacks, when you get into ERISA, you have your payers, you have pregnancy and family, like for NICU babies, family issues. There's a vendor for that. There's a vendor for the payers. There's a vendor for sleep, right? You can have a vendor for sleep to help control some of those claims or track claims. You got vendors for EAPs and mental health, so employee assistance programs and the mental health providers. In yesterday's meeting, the number one frequency of claims or a frequent claim flyer mile that was there that was in the claims data was mental health with this one employer. And we are seeing that skyrocketing across. So there's literally 15 vendors in our bucket of cost containment partners that we could add to that claim or that issue that's popped up. You also have weight nutrition vendors. That's part of the stack. You also have disease management vendors. That's also part of the stack. Financial well-being, physical activity and lifestyle, pharmacy, transparency. So that's the transparency is, shopping your actual medical bills before you have the procedure. You also have direct primary care, like the guy I'm going to lunch with today. He owns a direct primary care clinic and multiple. So we're visiting and talking with him about introducing that to our stack with our clients, right? That are in his area. You also have care coordination. You have second opinion surgeries or second opinion options. So, a lot of carriers don't like second opinions because they want to get them in and get them out. Well, from our perspective, we want second opinions through what we would call centers of excellence facilities. If one of your members on your health plan gets diagnosed with cancer, we want to incentivize them to get a second opinion. Why? Because 30% of all cancer diagnoses are misdiagnosed on on the onset. So my dad was one of those. It was completely misdiagnosed. They thought he had a particular cancer that he did not have, and ended up they did some genetic testing, and it changed the strategy in which they went about, fighting and tackling his cancer. It could also be narrow networks, right? So I go to a new area, right? Like I'm in now. There's 3 hospital systems. I guarantee you, one of those hospital systems is going to want to do a direct contract with me. So then how do I get a bunch of employers in the area, like 2,000, 3,000 employees together so that I can go to that hospital and say, we want a direct deal, right? That's also part of that vendor stack. And then you also have, again, those centers of excellence facilities. It could be not only second opinions, but it could be for transplants. It could be for all sorts of different things. So that's like the ecosystem of the vendor stack. And what we like to do is we like to ask ourselves a few questions when we're evaluating these vendors, because it is the wild, wild west right now. And if you're a new producer, be very careful with who you partner with. Very careful. And in fact, if you're at a large agency, I would also entice you to question why your firm is partnering with certain vendors, because there could be kickbacks there, and you might not want to take part of that. And that's a very real discussion in 2026. But for us, we get phone calls. I've probably gotten 6 calls this week already, and it's only Tuesday for vendors, and it's the new year, so everyone's getting out and trying to sell you. And as a broker, they know they have to go to you because you control the client relationship. So you're going to be getting the phone calls. And if they stop going to you, they're probably going to start calling your client, and your client's going to loop it back around to you. So the unfortunate part is you have to know almost every vendor or about every vendor that's out there. So you have to do your due diligence. It does not mean that you should be working with every one of those vendors. And that's a hard thing to do. And so what we like to again ask ourselves as we're evaluating these prospects or these prospective cost containment vendors is, do they have or provide advocacy for our members, for our clients? And what we see by clients, we're talking about employees. Are we able to navigate care with their program? So meaning, instead of just ingesting this member into this ecosystem of the BUCAs, right, where they own everything, will that vendor be able to do an about face turn and send that back to our own vendor stack within our health plan that we have procured? If they can do that, if they can help navigate care, what incentives can we provide to the members to utilize those services? So for example, if we have direct contracts with outpatient procedures for knee surgeries, imaging, and the like, I would really like to incentivize a bonus structure for those employees if they utilize that program, for them to get paid a percentage of the savings of that program in a check the next week, right? It creates great water cooler talk. The employees now incentivized because they've been paid to get healthcare, right? And you've also saved money because you're not running this through a traditional insurance network, even though you might have one. Incentives, are those there? And biometrics, data. Data is king. Will that vendor provide data back to me? Some vendors will not because they're white labeling another third party source that they don't have control over, right? So that vendor, you're literally paying a vendor to do something that they're white labeling. So all you have to do is remove that vendor to get to the actual vendor to have that relationship. If you're following me, so data is king. If they can't provide you the data, especially underneath the Consolidation Appropriations Act. And I understand that some of these vendors don't fall underneath ERISA, and they won't fall underneath an actual plan from a data standpoint, but the philosophy should apply to those vendors. Your employer should own that data and be able to have their hands on that data at any point in time. And if that vendor, that technology vendor is not willing to provide that to you, you need to walk or run as far away as you can, as quickly as possible. The last part of this is the most important. Can and how do we communicate this eco stack for this client to our members? Meaning, do we have too much, which I've been guilty of doing? Are we trying to do too much too soon to where the members are just getting overwhelmed, right? Because we did surveys, employee surveys for their own health plans, probably in late Q4, and some of our clients that we're doing the most with. So we're attacking diabetes, we're attacking NICU babies, we're attacking all these different things, Trey. And you know what the one thing that popped up the most with our clients that we were doing the most with from their employee perspective was? How do I understand my deductible? So
Wow.
we've invested all of this time and all this energy, and yet we still have employees that are massively asking questions about what's my deductible, my out-of-pocket expense, and how do I understand that? So, healthcare happens to you when you least expect it as an employee, but if they're not able to tie in the vendor stack to the member's experience, then what are we really doing? And so I think that's crucial. So again, advocacy, care navigation, incentives, biometrics, so the data, and then how do you communicate that to the members?
Awesome. I've got a couple questions for you. Before I do that, though, I want to shout out to today's sponsor, Insurance Xdate. Generate leads, win new biz. Insurance Xdate is where new business begins. Industry relevant data delivered on a software platform built for sales, not research. Identify and engage with prospects in minutes, keep track of your opportunities, and get production done. They've got work comp data like X dates and comp premium amounts, and they've also got health and retirement info for you EB guys. Also, we're taking on new sponsors as we've started bringing on Luke and then also doing the interview with top producers. Our numbers are going. That's burr. That's a hockey stick. That means
Uh,
vertical.
Heck
And so
yeah.
we're looking for more sponsors. We can provide you the numbers and show you why it makes sense. I mean this with all humility. I think we have the most ears of EB and PNC producers in the mid market, and I can show you the data to prove that. So if you are a vendor, SaaS, whatever, an MGA broker of any kind, a captive, and you would like to get the earballs of mid market, we're your Huckleberry. All right, moving on. That's my pitch. So this, you may have answered this, and this may be a totally stupid question, but I'm just thinking as a PNC idiot. Like I'm thinking, okay, I let's say I get a wild hair and I decide, you know what, I'm going to get back into the production game, and I go and but EB is what I need to do, and so I go hop into this shop, and whether it's 20 guys or 200 guys or whatever, but it's nobody really knows how to build this out. How would I even begin to do this? Are these people like, are these vendors reaching out to me and then so I'm just like aggregating and building relationships and doing that? Or is it something I have to go seek out? How would I even begin to like start to vet these things out?
Love this question. This is actually pretty funny. When I first started, my partner John and I, our senior leadership did not believe in this at all. They were kind of, and not like in a innovation standpoint, they didn't want to pay for it, is what I'm getting at. So they didn't want to pay for us to go out and meet with these folks and do certain things and whatnot. And so in the old school days, I say that 12 or so years ago, it really was boots on the ground. And I'll get back to that here in a second because there's a strategy here that we've been doing for a while to find and to meet with these vendors. But you got to get past the sale guy. And this is what I mean by that. You are the consultant. You are going to have, if you just post out on LinkedIn and you say, hey, I need a data management vendor, you're going to have for EB, you're going to have like 30 different people reach out to you and they're going to try to sell you on it. It's that easy because you're the EB guy. Like they have to get through you to get to clients. Like they're not, your clients will not take their phone call because they're going to direct them right back to you. So you are the key holder. So the issue with that is you can't really vet the sales guys because they're selling you, right? You have to get to the founder, right? Or the owner, or the board behind it. And that's really where you have to get to the real decision maker, the guy that actually built the product itself, and meet and talk with them. And here's why I say that is because I've gotten burned multiple times to where I did work with the sales guy. We had a great implementation. 6 months later, that entire company sells or rolls into a different company, and the model changes right after we implemented everything, and the client was just getting used to utilizing those services. And that is painful because your client is like, why didn't you tell us? You're the expert. I can't, an event I can't control. I had to get more disciplined in my responses. So going back to the E plus R equals O analogy. So part of me becoming more disciplined in that response or proactive in that response was learning to vet appropriately. Now, I think there's something to this formula that I'm about to share, because you're putting yourself on the line out there. I try to invest in a rule of thumb I've always done since selling Cutco is try to invest a 1% of my income back into my education, right? So if I can take that 1% and continue to reinvest it in relationships and my education with what I'm doing, then I can become a better professional each and every day. I said that in one of the podcasts before. Like if you want to have a $5 million book, you have to grow yourself. That's really the secret sauce of all of this. You have to be reading, you have to be educating yourself, constantly pushing. It is a muscle, right? Like what we do is a muscle and you've got to get really good at it. Otherwise you'll get fatigued. Part of that is investing in yourself is going to conferences, going to SIA, going to some of these other conferences. Some of them I think are super silly. Like there's some of those that I'm not going to name that I probably would never attend because it's just everyone trying to give each other a pat on the back for doing really not a whole lot. And so what I try to do is find those events that are going to move the needle with my relationships with those founders. So I was in Utah recently with a particular point solution partner that we've been vetting for 10 years, right? And I hope to have this guy on the show soon. But we've been talking with him for 10 years, haven't not done business with him because we are slow moving with that, right? We're loyal to our vendor stack and we have that because we take a lot of time to vet those folks. Well, things start to change in the market. Companies sell, service levels start to shift. And I made a call and said, hey, I think it's time we start to talk about doing business. But he's also one of the owners and founders of the company, right? I'm not having to weed through different levels. And I'm able to have that conversation of going through and saying, what's your sales strategy look like for your business? Like, are y'all going to sell? Like, what's the exit? What's this look like? How many years do we have together? No, and they can't, fully give me everything, but they can look me eye to eye and say, we're here for the longevity. Investing in things like that, in addition to those relationships, is huge, and it's got to be your own money. Like if your firm's there to help sponsor it, that's great. When my firm saw that my partner and I were spending our own money and reinvesting back in ourselves, the script changed because then it started to work, and then they wanted to say, hey, this is a great idea. Let's get everybody on board with it. But we had to make that first step. The other thing I would say outside of investing yourself is paying for the vendors, and this is so silly, paying for the vendors' meals, right? So if you're entertaining somebody, flip the script. They're not entertaining you. You're actually interviewing them. So it's kind of like if you want to call it a control thing, what have you. I call it a respect thing. But when I'm talking with a lot of vendors, whether it's an ancillary vendor or a potential point solution partner, when we go out, I try to pick up the tab. John, again, Collier taught me this a long time ago when we were young. Like if they see that it's my money, not the firm, but my money that's buying their lunch or their dinner, my conversation is going to go that much further with them. And when I have to make a call and they have to pick up the phone, they're going to want to work my problem because they know it means that much more to me. So it's all about the intentionality. So again, going to events is great to source those folks. You can get vendor fatigue very quickly though with a bunch of guys and gals that are trying to sell you their goods and services. What you really want to do is identify the buckets in which those claims within your plan that are struggling with. So if you've got, for example, 5 clients and they all have diabetic issues, well, go out and find a diabetic vendor. You don't have to start with a stack of 12, different buckets. Start with just one, find that solution, get a deep relationship with that vendor, and then start to stack, right? So if it's wellness, find a wellness vendor, stack that, keep going, but be authentic with what you do because your word does hold weight because this is a very, very, very small industry. And if you burn someone, your reputation will be known. And, I, I just, I would rather tell someone no and it be disappointing that we're not going to work together for 10 years later for us to work together and it be a fruitful partnership. Um, because I think that's just good business. I'm being honest with those folks. So I hope that answers your question, Trey, but that's the long-winded roundabout way of getting getting that out.
No, it's great. While we're on kind of the subject, you want to kind of jam on the new deal with PBMs and the new announcement by the Department of Labor?
Yeah, I mean, so transparency is huge. And if you're a broker not leaning into the fiduciary channel, shame on you. And what I mean by fiduciary is don't just talk to the fiduciary, like actually get to know Arissa, like it's your girlfriend. Talk to her, read about her, talk about her to other people. Like just get to know what Arissa actually is, and what
You
it
want to tell
isn't.
us the news first? What happened last week, in
Yeah,
case they missed it?
yeah. Yeah, so the DOL came out. Part of the big beautiful bill was the Trump administration was calling and regulating more pharmaceuticals or pharmacy vendors. Part of that was disclosing auditing. It was also disclosing how they were being paid through various channels, and really just creating a full-on accountability for those PBMs. What does that mean to your clients? Your clients are the fiduciary; they are the plan sponsor. So, in order for you to be not a co-fiduciary, but a consultant that is a fiduciary led, you need to be able to take that information, give it back to that employer, and it's in a digestible way. Right now, there's no action to be taken, but there's a lot of fireworks going on, and what it could mean is that the big three or any of the big PBMs that are out there that are owned by a carrier, they're about to have to release a whole lot of data and a whole lot of financial information that it's not going to look good. So what I mean by that is if you have clients that are with the Bucas and they're underneath one of their PBMs, you might want to start doing some triage before it happens, before any kind of shoe drops, because if it is audited or if those PBMs are audited and things do come out like they should, your clients will be getting phone calls from other brokers about why they're with certain people and why they're still doing business with that PBM. And so it's again imperative of you to be that consultant, to be agnostic in the industry, but be educating your uh, your clients on that. So, and again, not only did the DOL do this, also the states are following suit. Kansas was one of those. Michigan was following suit, and a couple others. Where even from a state perspective, they're drilling down. The big issue is the government has no idea really how to drill down on these PBMs just yet. And so there is I think it's a 60-day window where they're allowing employers to respond to this simply this statement of, hey, we know there's fraud, waste, and abuse in the PBM sector. Let's spend 60 days hearing from employers of what they're struggling with, and then from that, we're going to redefine and tighten the law down or tighten our objectives of what we're trying to go after. So I think in the coming weeks, you're going to see that it's going to be kind of like a funnel approach. Right now, it's pretty big, and they're going to continue to funnel that down into really a sniper level approach of what they're going to attack and where they're going to go after or what they're going to go after. Now, here's the issue though with PBMs. It's a shell game. So just because they start auditing one thing doesn't mean that they're not going to take that money and move it to left pocket, right pocket. In reality, will this work in theory? I mean, yeah, it could work, but the reality of it is, you know, these PBMs are really smart at making money, and we are in a capitalistic society in the United States, and people have got to get paid. And so I think that's reason. I think it's more reason to work with good people and good partners There are PBMs out there that are really, really good. They only charge an administrative rate. They don't do the spread pricing game. Yes, it looks like it costs more in fixed cost money, but it's because it's honest and transparent, and you should be educating your client on that.
You do not have to go into anything more on this than you want to, but just talking about news and all the juicy stuff. Did you happen to look into the recent Epstein files? What just dropped?
Dude, Dr. Peta Tia is up
Bro,
a man.
what are we doing, Peter?
He was my guy.
My
He was my guy.
my wife is so bummed. She's like a huge Peter Attia guy, and then she's been, and it's
So,
not
so,
really the
so is
locker room
Epstein.
band. Yeah, right. It's not. She's like, I can deal with the locker room banter. Like he said some pretty inappropriate stuff or whatever. But it was like, it's kind of like just you chose to associate with this guy even after he was like a known dude over and over and over and over, and then you were also like partying with him when your son was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
dying. It's
yeah.
like, mm,
Well, I tell you, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates. Melinda Gates called that a few years ahead of its maturity. So she got out when before the pack fell. So it'll be interesting, man. It is funny. It is now. It's hilarious, and not to get overly political, but this one's for the boys. Is that Trump was like, "Yeah, go release the files," and now he's suing the Epstein, uh, or Epstein's foundation for releasing the files to the government. So it's like Trump's like, who's on first, who's on second? He's playing the game. So I don't
think
know. It's wild,
yeah.
wild times.
Yep. All right. Well, let's put a pin in it there. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole and abandon. It's like I told Micah the other day. I'm a conservative. It just is what it is. I don't care. But I had made a comment on this post, and I won't go into what it was, but it was kind of
Oh,
like kick the
I
hornet's
saw it.
nest.
I
And
saw
I
it.
was like, you know what? I probably shouldn't do that, and not for the reason that you might think. It's not because like I don't want retaliation or what. I don't really care, but it's the Michael Jordan like Republicans buy Nike shoes too, and it's
Yeah,
like that's it. It's like
yeah.
I'm not going to publicly take sides anymore because it's just not worth it. I want to we want to help left, right, center, up, down, yellow, red, it doesn't matter. We're here to help everybody. And so I'm gonna keep my stuff to myself moving forward.
Look,
But
at the end of the day, though, you can't share things with people that don't want to listen, right? So it's that old proverb of can't cast your pearls before swine. So, I don't give opinions unless they're asked, and that's kind of the way I go about my life now. Is unless someone has it and wants to know my opinion, I'm just not going to give it. So, I'm safer that way.
I know you're a framework guy, and so I was given this framework by my just my sponsor. I could care less. And he said three questions. Does it have to be said? Does it have to be said right now? Does it have to be said right now by you? And if it doesn't fit those
Strong.
three, then keep your mouth shut. I was
That's
like,
called having.
damn.
If you can do that constantly, you got some serious agency with yourself, and you got to respect that. So, love it.
All right, bro. Appreciate you. You're the man.
Let's roll. Talk to you
All
soon.
right. See ya. Good luck. Go get some skins on the wall behind enemy
Yeah,
lines.
we will. We're lining them up.
All right. See you, bro.
All right, man.